All right, everybody. In this episode, we're going to be talking about silver's future versus inflation. Now, we're going to start out today a bit on Wall Street Silver with this question that was posed by Silver Stacker stating food inflation, bread, where we shop, up over 20% this calendar year. In comments, please post food price increases you are seeing. How is inflation affecting your food budget? Now, funny enough, I was just responding to a question that I got on one of my videos about the grocery store. And I was saying, hey, me and my wife, we both were shopping and noticed that food prices had gone up dramatically since the last time we walked in there. Now, mind you, we'd been using Amazon Fresh for the last several months, but since walking into that store, we came out not really buying them as much as we usually buy, which will net us around $100 or so. And we were around like 150. So we even noticed some food prices had gone up. So things have been looking pretty wild as far as consumer prices are concerned, even on that anecdotal personal front. And it makes sense as we take a look and see how things have been performing with our precious metals here. Now, if you take a look at silver prices, we're above $28 again, which is good to see. We got as high as $28.46, which is really great. Gold is above 1900, which is nice to see. Now, obviously, we have some sharp drops here on the opens, which is fine. I'm not really too bothered by things like that. Let's take a look at the price movement against the moving averages. And as you can see, things are pretty positive for silver. So again, in the near term, my view is pretty much that we're gonna obviously have some up days and down days, but in the long term, we should be expecting prices to increase. Now, why do I say that? Well, today I wanted to actually take a look at domestic inflation on a more granular level. Now, you've seen me go on the Federal Reserve's website, as far as the research data that they've done, and taking a look at M2 velocity and M2, the money stock, and sometimes I'll look at the GDP deflator on there. But this time, I wanted to take that data and mess around with it a little bit more and manipulate it a little bit more on my end. So this is what I did. I took the M2 money stock, which is here. Under here, you have under this cell that says M, you have the velocity under the cell that says V. And then you have the GDP deflator, which I also call U.S. domestic inflation, as the CPI also imports inflation internationally. This is much more of a focus on U.S. behavior. Now, let's take a look at what we have here on the graphs. So obviously, as you can see here, the U.S. money stock has been increasing, obviously. Velocity of currency has been on the decline, as some of you may well know. And U.S. domestic inflation, which is the GDP deflator, has also been generally increasing. Now, this is all on a quarterly basis, and the date range goes back to 1990, first quarter of 1990, all the way to the first quarter of 2021, where we are today, or where we were recently. Obviously, the Q2 data hasn't been released yet for 2021. But over here, this is the important part. I want you to take a look at the percentage changes from 1990 to 2021 between M2, the velocity, and the GDP deflator. Now, as you can see here for M2, the lowest point was generally around Q1 of 1990, and the highest point was pretty much Q1 of 2021, and it was about a 518.45% increase in money stock, which is pretty high in my general opinion. But if you take a look at the velocity of currency, now this is the interesting one. There was as you can see, negative movement here, a decrease of 49.68%. Now, despite this negative movement, we still had an overall positive U.S. domestic inflation rate or percentage change of 275.49%. So despite this, we still had some pretty significant movement in the GDP deflator. Now, why is this important? Well, as you can see, we have a general trend down with the money stock. But as you guys well know, during 2020, we had a very significant drop, which we hadn't seen pretty much along this date range. And this was pretty abnormal, obviously, because of what happened in 2020. But take a look here. We had a little bit of a bump to the north side, and then we start to come down just a little bit. So I wanted to actually zoom in on this movement because it is a telltale sign of what we can expect once economies reopen. Now, obviously, things weren't fully reopened, or things weren't really reopened during this time. But imagine once things really start to reopen in the coming months and next year, we should expect to see, or I expect to see, the velocity of currency head more to the north side to do a little bit of mean reversion, as again, this was very abnormal. This drop was very abnormal. I expect to see some mean reversion and the velocity of currency to head a little bit to the north side. Now, what can we expect as far as a percentage change is concerned? Well, let's take a look at what happened during that time between Q2 of 2020 and Q3 of 2020. There was an 8.37% increase in the GDP deflator as we saw the velocity of currency actually trend up this brief period in time. Again, this is the point where we saw the little blip to the north side for Q2 of 2020. And here's the dates actually, or the quarterly dates. Now, here's what we normally see, or what we had been seeing, despite a negative downtrend in velocity of currency and obviously an increase in money stock continuing. We had a percent increase of 2.65% between Q4 of 2020 and Q1 of 2021. Again, velocity of currency trending down, the M2 money stock trending up. And if you take a look at the Q2 to Q3 money stock increase, wasn't too drastic. And take a look at the increase here from Q3 or Q4 to Q1. Again, not too drastic. What was the sensitive part of this equation was the velocity of currency really increasing the GDP deflator during this time. Now, remember, during Q2 and Q3 of 2020, we saw gold and silver prices skyrocket. Now, what can we expect once we start to see the velocity of currency increase later this year, possibly 2022, possibly? Well, I expect to see silver and gold prices continue their uptrend even more. Now, that's my view. You may have a different view. So let me know what it is in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you're new. It's Black Bullion for gold and silver today.com.